Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 358 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Friday, September 13th, 2024, where I am joined once again by South Florida Sun Sentinel columnist Dave Hyde to recap a brutal night on every single possible level for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk Tua, we're going to talk what went wrong, and just how ugly it was from every single angle. First off, of course, Dave, how are you?
I'm better than some Dolphin fans, and certainly people in the Dolphins right now. Brutal night, defining night on ways we'll get into.
No, absolutely. And before we start and dive into it, I just want to put out an explanation here. Apologies to everybody for canceling the live post-game recap. The issue was I needed to stay on top of any Tua development that included listening and watching live Mike McDaniel's post-game press conference, which started very late and which took a while, so could not be done. I will have planning on having a live show on Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll put out notices on Twitter, and if you subscribe, as I hope you do, you will see it in your notification. So let's dive into it. I guess we have to start with Tua, which is obviously the biggest story here. I don't even know where to start other than to say that I don't know about you. I am not one of those who is gonna write a column and saying Tua should retire. It's clear. It's obviously his decision. If he were a family member, I know what I would tell him, but I'm not his family member. And as Mike McDaniel so aptly pointed out, the number one concern should be that the guy, gets okay as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little knee-jerk right now to say he should retire when the doctor's got to do their work, Tua's got to do his thinking. But I can walk you down. I mean, the Dolphins play in Seattle next. Dan Marino's rookie year, he doesn't remember the end of the game in Seattle. Dan Marino's last year, game-winning drive in the playoffs, he doesn't remember that drive. There are so many anecdotal stories of guys playing with concussions. Who am I to say at what was this fourth concussion that we know of? That's the line that's drawn in the sand that he has to retire. I mean, so there's some things that have to play out here. There's a personal side of it, and you have to have compassion for Tua. This is what he's worked for his whole life, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought it was a wonderful moment when Mike McDaniel kissed him on the forehead as they're going off the field. There's a place for human friendships and bondings and coach-players relationships inside the bigger picture. So I like that. I like seeing that. The human condition always matters. But I'm sure we're going to get into what it means for the franchise too.
Yeah, and again, here's the point I want to make with, ricocheting off of what you said, that when you hear the term players coach, listen to beyond what Mike McDaniel did with Tua coming off the field, the kiss on the forehead. Listen to when Mike McDaniel does press conferences or Zoom media sessions, whatever, when he talks about a player who's involved in something, either a big injury or what happened with Tyreek Hill last Sunday, and you can see the guy gets emotional. So, I mean, this is under the definition of players coach in the dictionary. You could very well see Mike McDaniel's face on there. I mean, this is clearly he embodies it, maybe more so than just about as much as any coach around the NFL.
Yes? Yeah, certainly. I mean, football especially, pro sports in general, but football especially, where it's a 3-year eras basically for rosters. You don't see this very often. Now you can argue that's both a strength and a weakness. Certainly, we'd all love to work for a boss who cared for you as much as Mike does for his players. But you got to look at it from what's good for the organization too at this point. So,
no, correct. And then the latest update that we have on Tua involves Mike McDaniel's Zoom media session on Friday morning. We're taping this around noonish. McDaniel spoke at 10 a.m. He had not seen a Tua at the facility to that point, had no further information in terms of how he felt, what his symptoms might have been beyond what he said last night. And on the issues of whether Tua is going to go on IR, the possibility of retirement, McDaniel wanted no part of this, again, because his focus was, as I said, just strictly on day-to-day, Tua getting better and all that, and then that bridge to be crossed. He did say, the one thing he did say is, if I were to guess, I don't see any way he plays against Seattle, which would seem to be at the very minimum, which would leave us to our second topic here. Anything to add there before I jump into the second topic?
No, that about covered. It was a long press conference full of emotion, but that was the news to come out of it.
Correct. Beyond Teron Armstead, who McDaniel said it's not a worst case scenario. We're not looking at season ending. He's going to play sooner rather than later. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to miss some time. And the offshoot of that was, well, once Teron Armstead was out of the lineup, why wasn't Patrick Paul inserted in there, the rookie second-round pick, instead of Kendall Lamb? And McDaniel's answer basically was that he didn't want to throw in his rookie into the fire in a situation like this, although, unless I'm mistaken, the score at that time might have been
31-10.
Right, got to 31-10. So maybe that would have been the perfect time. So now, is it going to be better to have him start against the Seattle Seahawks the next game if Armstead can't play, as we are right to suspect he won't?
I don't think he'll start. I think Kendall Lamb right now is the better player. I mean, I think Mike decided that, and he said it in a nice way. But Kendall Lamb's a pretty good backup. He was last year, and
Yep.
but if you were to pick some of the problem areas for the Dolphins in their building and thinking and decisions, it's like Buffalo handpicked each one of them and caused the nerve to be hit in such a bad way for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and the couple of issues from the game, I think, to me, the Dolphins' depth or lack thereof was badly exposed. And I know there was some talk in the offseason, maybe this is a deep team Dolphins have. And first of all, wide receiver position, and I know injuries have played a factor with no Malik Washington and OBJ being a non-factor so far.
But, wait.
Go ahead.
Injuries. OBJ, they signed him. Chris Greer says we signed him knowing he's probably going to be injured at the start of the year. They're signing him to a 1-year deal, and he's going to miss the first 4 games. I mean, at a position you need help. They have 2 great receivers, the best talents on the team, the engines. Okay. But you go into the offseason knowing you need a third receiver, and you sign someone who's played half the games over the last 4 years, and he's going to miss the opening stretch of the season. That makes absolutely no sense to me. And that's malpractice right there.
No, you're right. That's absolutely tough to defend because, I said this, I said this like in an earlier podcast. It's like, what was the hurry to sign him in May if you knew, as you said, he was going to have to miss the first 4 games? Why don't you let him get healthy first and then sign him?
And so you're playing guys who you signed, Robbie Chosen and Dupree, who you just signed, and you look at communication problems with Tua. Those first 2 interceptions that Buffalo had were the definition of that, were the receivers not doing exactly what Tua expected. And the third one was as bad a pass as you're going to see in the NFL, the one that was returned for a touchdown. But the first 2, there were communication problems going on there.
No, correct. I will point out, though, that for the first one, Mike McDaniel, excuse me, going through puberty here, sorry. On the first one, he actually said Tua threw behind the receiver. I actually
did. It hit his shoulder pad or arm or something. Come on.
He also turned around late, and that's what I put on Twitter.
Yes.
That to me was undue. He turned around late, and yes, it was a little bit behind him, but certainly was not a horribly difficult catch if he turns around quickly enough.
Now the second guess there, beyond that, why wasn't he looking? Is both Hill and Waddle, I believe, and I was told this. I got to go back and look at the film. Were on the bench, and why were both of them out? And you had like Berrios and Dupree, and
as I'm pointing out, because I know the answer to one of them. If you remember the play before that, Tua tried to go deep to Tyreek, and after
Right.
the play, Tyreek asked out. Waddle,
Okay.
I don't know, but that's what happened with Tyreek. He was gassed from running down the field on the previous play.
But the larger point is roster construction. Okay, you're keeping 6 receivers essentially and yet you only have 2 receivers that you trust. And they're great receivers, but you went into the offseason knowing we got to beef up this receiver core. We need help there, and you didn't do it.
And having said that, the Bills kind of pretty much neutralized those 2 guys. I mean, they basically, what's the word I'm looking for? They basically neutered them the whole night because by the way they were playing, which was basically like, yeah, go ahead and have your stuff, short, and we'll just cover everything in the time. And then it begs the question, then why would they not a steady diet? And they did it a couple and it worked well, like jet sweeps, the end around, where were the quick throws right at the snap to Tyreek and Waddle, when you can see that that's what Buffalo's going to give you.
Yeah, their touchdown drive, they're tied it up. It seemed like a one going jet sweep one way, one jet sweep the other way there for a while, and yeah, they got away from that. And Buffalo's doing what any smart defense does and saying, we'll give you the short stuff. You try to run 10-play drives. We don't think you can do it. We don't think you have the patience or the discipline to do it. You're not going to beat us deep. And look at 20 points, 14 points, now 10 points in the last 3 games they've given up to. They figured out the Dolphins. They cracked the code here.
Yeah, and this is where you would think also, the addition of Jonnu Smith would be like sort of an antidote to what Buffalo was doing. He had like 1 15-yard gain early on, and then that was it. Pretty much the offense was basically Devon Achane, and I mean, hat tip to him. He was great and all that, but at some point, I don't know about you, I was watching the game, it's like, do they not have anybody else?
Get him out of there. He's 22 carries, 7 catches, and a game where he wasn't even sure he was going to be playing because of injury. I mean, his body can't withstand that. The other thing to point out here it exasperates the problem. That was a JV defense Buffalo fielded. They're missing 5 starters. I was talking to the Buffalo writers. They before the game, we don't know how they're going to hold up. And then they lose their leading tackler early in the game. So they're missing their top 2 tacklers. Milano's out for the year. They're a Pro Bowl cornerback. Hamlin's playing, and he's a backup. The guy who had 2 interceptions, undrafted second-year player who had his first interception and then his second interception of his career. So, from Buffalo's standpoint, that was a JV defense out there.
Correct. But this is where, Sean McDermott.
Yes.
We need to say it. Sean McDermott out-schemed Mike McDaniel.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not by a little bit either. Which was rather disturbing. And then the other issue is the offensive line. And I know so much of the focus is on the interior of the offensive line, but if we're going to be honest about it, and the guy is a great dude. I like him a lot, but Austin Jackson, had a rough night. And then Robert Jones got bowled over on the play that resulted in the pick, where Tua's got to be smarter than that and just take the sack. It was 24-10 at the time. It was like, I'm looking at the game book here, 9:37 left in the third quarter. Certainly the game's not out of reach. You can't just
the whole Dolphins scheme is to scheme away from the offensive line, and they need one good player and Teron Armstead. And here's a guy. Again, this gets into some fundamental roster construction for me in that he's going to miss games. He hasn't practiced all off season, and then second game of the year he's out. And okay, it's not catastrophic injury; it's a shoulder. Not catastrophic, evidently, but what does that mean? I don't know. And we're in game 2, and we're missing games. So, and the thing is, the injuries aren't a surprise. So, I look at their top 5 paid players, and 2 of them got hurt, and. Yeah, the receivers are the 2 others. And so the question is, how do you go on from here?
Yeah, and one thing I'll say about Tua, and I don't want to go into the durability or whatever, the extension or anything like that. What I will say is what he did last year, better than anything else, is he protected himself.
Yeah.
Okay, what he didn't do last night, even on the interception, he's throwing the ball while somebody has a grasp of his jersey. If the idea is to preserve yourself and stay in the lineup, eat the sack. On the site and on the play where he was injured, he's scrambling. I believe he could have gotten the first down even had he
He
slid.
had the first down. It was 4th and 5. He had the first down at that point.
No, I understand that, but if he slides, it's where you start to slide. So, but even then, what he could have done is just slid head first if he wanted to make sure he wasn't short, but slide straight into the ground as opposed to initiate the contact with Damar Hamlin. And again, this was what he did so well in 2023, was never put himself in harm's way. And
well,
again, it wound up biting.
This was a frustrating night. You know, he's thrown 3 interceptions. He feels the need to make something happen.
Yep.
I mean, you could just see why he was doing that. I got to get a spark for our offense. We
Yep.
need to do something, and he's overreaching, and you know, it's a violent game, and you can only protect yourself from that at certain points in certain ways. And you know, this was one of the questions for a few years, you know, for his career, really. And you know, we're back to all the questions that everybody got so tired and numb to a couple years ago. But there's a larger one. I mean, there is a contract issue there. If there's a personal side to Tua over there, there's a contract over here. And this is why I think you were in the same camp. You had to say, it's nice that they're rewarding everybody on this team who you know, it's the most comfortable team of all because everybody's happy. But who's watching out for the organization? Who's standing up and saying, wait a second, and do we need to do this? Why are we doing this? What happens if A, B, or C happens? Someone had to stand up and protect the organization, and nobody did.
No, I agree. And the point I would say is the Dolphins did right by all their star players, but they do right by the organization itself with all of those contracts. And I know some people were very quick on Twitter to say, "Hey, goes, you know, the offensive line. We knew it was gonna, you know, cause a problem and all that." And I'm here to tell you that based on my initial viewing of the game, I didn't think that Aaron Brewer played badly at all. I didn't think Liam was bad at all. Austin had a bad night. Robert Jones didn't have a great night. And those were the 2 main guys that stand out to me in a kind of a negative way, and that's going to happen. And it's not going to be a clean pocket every single solitary time. And as we mentioned before, Jacksonville has the 2 stud. Actually, they have 3 very good outside pass rushers. Well, the Buffalo defensive line is good all the way across. And we knew this was going to be a heavy challenge. And I think we had said, like, basically, the question is always going to be, can they step up against, you know, the quality opposition that you need to be to advance where you want to go? And they came up woefully short.
Yeah, this was a game of high expectation. Game 2 after a very optimistic offseason, as directed, you know, from inside the Dolphins, you know, and you know, they didn't have a good Jacksonville game, but they won. And so you say, okay, you move on. But you saw the problems exaggerated by you know, I wouldn't even say that Buffalo played. They didn't ask Josh Allen to do anything. They didn't ask their receivers to do anything either, which is they weren't getting downfield passes much at all. But they didn't have to because of the way the game went. The downfield pass to receivers, I should say. They threw a 30-something yard to set up a touchdown to a running back. Kincaid had a couple passes early, but Buffalo's got weaknesses, and the Dolphins just couldn't get to them in the game because of what was going on with them on their roster.
No, and if you look at the defensive side of the ball, Buffalo had 247 yards, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of plays, the 49-yard touchdown. That to me was, I mean, a combination. And again, based on my initial viewing, So don't jump at me if for some reason, if after a review I come up with something else. But my initial viewing is David Long ran himself completely out of position into that stack where 3 Buffalo offensive linemen were blocking Deshaun Hand. And then that created the big hole up the middle. And then Jordan Poyer took a wrong angle and that allowed Cook to get by him. That's just bad technical play on that one. Outside of that, the 33-yard completion you mentioned to the third down back, Ty Johnson. Well, that's Josh Allen. That's the one play he made where it was a quote unquote, for lack of a better term, like a Josh Allen play where he just scrambled and he's looking downfield the whole time. And as I said on Twitter last night, and feel free to disagree with me if you want, I don't care which cornerback you are, but if you have to cover a guy for that long while the quarterback's looking at him the entire time and you're basically not looking at him, at some point the guy's going to disengage. That happened to Xavier Howard a couple of years ago. Oh, I can't remember what team it was. It might have been, I can't remember, but there was a scramble play and the guy eventually, after making 17 moves in the back of the end zone, finally disengaged from Howard and scored a touchdown. And some fans were like, X got smoked. No, he didn't. You can't ask guys to cover receivers for that long.
Yeah, and they really didn't have much pressure on Allen on the limited times he was trying to make it. He needed to make a play. And again, where are they on the defensive line? Jalen Phillips has made a remarkable recovery to be on the field and had a sack in the opener. But Deshaun Hand just got blown off by. Now it was almost like he was triple teamed in a way, and so there was a schematic.
He was.
There was a schematic issue here going on that Buffalo was into something, but just before that, I believe the series before that, they ran 10 and 8 yards right up the gut too. So, teams are going to see that and they're going to say, okay, if how many teams have power running games anymore in the NFL? But the Dolphins are going to be tested by those who have them. Yeah,
except this is the part where I would tell you, if you take away that 49-yard run, which again, when there was some MAs on there, missed assignments on defense, the Bills then would get 25. Let me look at my math here. 24 carries for 59 yards. So it wasn't. And then if I told you before the game, I
feel like I'm talking to Tom Olivedani.
You take away those.
You take away that 72-yard run. We played a pretty good game.
But if you've covered the Dolphins long enough or followed Dolphins long enough, you know what we're talking about here. But
I love Tom Olivedani. Actually, he's a great guy, but my mind went there.
I know, but that usually was 3 long plays. This was one really bad defensive play. And then if I told you before the game, Josh Allen's going to be 13 for 19 for 139 yards, you'd have gone, sign me up. Dolphins are going to win this game.
That's Josh Allen did he take a shower after the game? I don't even know, because he really wasn't. His biggest remarkable play was coming back from a scramble where he went behind the Dolphins bench and he jumped over the bench. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's pretty remarkable. That was interesting. But that was the big athletic play he made this game. And now he's 12-2, and the Dolphins are a healthy 1 game behind Buffalo now. They have to go to Buffalo. So you go 0-2 against Buffalo. That means you got to make up 3 games somewhere to get out of that tiebreaker. And here we go.
No, and this is one where since I've done it in previous occasions, this is one of those where Josh Allen's going to get credit for a win as a starter against the Dolphins here, but he had very little to do with the win. If we're going to be honest about it.
That's fine. I mean,
no, but it's, again, it is what it illustrates the point. Usually Josh Allen's a difference maker in this series. Yeah. He wasn't last night in the least. And the Dolphins, again, to me, the defense didn't play bad at all. And the first touchdown was a borderline pick play where David Long and the Dolphins were in man-to-man, got caught in the wash and bumped into a Bills player who was coming across the middle the other way and stumbled, and that left James Cook wide open coming out of the backfield. So, but again, you give up 247 total yards. I mean, it's not bad work. The one remaining issue we have not discussed, moving forward at quarterback. And again, this is not McDaniel didn't want to necessarily go there. He did mention the Dolphins are going to go get a veteran, and this is where we can discuss the options. He did say, though, Skylar Thompson's next man up. And if we're looking at the options here, was that some sort of statement here?
Well, I haven't seen. He didn't play last year. What I saw in preseason, I'd be uncomfortable running this. This is Tua's offense. Everything was hand sculpted and detailed for Tua.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, you put in a guy like it wasn't Mike White's offense. It wasn't. I don't see it as being Skylar's offense. So they're going to have to make changes, obviously. But can they redo the offense? So the surprise to me is they didn't get someone a little more like Tua-ish as a backup. So you don't have to make big changes to the offense if he goes out for a few weeks.
But I have somebody who is Tua-ish.
Jimmy Garoppolo?
How did you know? How did you know? Do we have this going on?
Yeah, well, that's we're thinking along the same lines here.
Okay, well, here's a couple of things we need to mention about Jimmy Garoppolo. Number one, most important, he's under contract. He plays for the Los Angeles Rams. He will finish serving out the second of his 2-game suspension Sunday, then will be reinstated by the NFL. So now the first question is, are the Rams going to be willing to trade?
No. Why would they?
Well, because they can get depending on how much they squeeze the Dolphins and how willing. And this is going to run into, again, how long will Tua be out? If Tua is going to be out, if it's going to be an extended period of time, would that not make the Dolphins more willing, receptive to the idea of throwing the Rams? I don't know what it was, second or a third. The other issue as well, the other issue that we have to say is if we're talking about injury prone, Jimmy Garoppolo gets a lot of injuries. So we have to accept that. But
again, this to me, this gets back to who's running the ship there. Who's running the ship? You got a fragile quarterback, right? Okay, you made it last year. Maybe you make it this year, but maybe you don't. And Jimmy Garoppolo was there for the taking. And maybe he didn't want to come here, but he went to now he was in LA, living in LA, so maybe that has something to do with it. But he's not going to the Rams to play. He's going to be a backup. Who's running the shop here? I'm mystified.
So you're suggesting the Dolphins should have signed Jimmy Garoppolo in the offseason?
Yes. Yeah, somebody they're comfortable with if Tua goes down, whether it's a game or 6 games or the season, they're comfortable with. That's what good teams do. Contending teams, they're not on the Friday morning after they lose their quarterback thinking, "Oh my God, who's out there?" They're in July and May. They're solving these problems.
Here's a list of other names that have been mentioned. Ryan Tannehill. Let me go through the list before we dissect them. Ryan Tannehill, Nate Sudfeld, Trevor Siemian, Carson Wentz, C.J. Beathard, Mac Jones, Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, and 2 of our South Florida colleagues throughout, including your friend and mine, Omar, throughout Teddy Bridgewater. I know that's going to make some Dolphin fans' heads explode. And then the other one is poaching Mike White off the Bills practice squad. Any of those names stand out? But by the way, we should mention that Wentz plays for the Chiefs, Mac Jones plays for the Jaguars, Jameis Winston plays for the Browns. So any of those 3 potential acquisitions would have to be done via trade.
Those teams aren't going to trade unless you offer them something crazy. Why would they potentially hog tie their seasons? Again, they planned ahead that this is a problem. Maybe the Dolphins, maybe they're they're completely comfortable with Skylar Thompson, but it sure didn't sound like it in preseason. And I guess we're going to find out. So, maybe Mike White, but again, they're in the same spot they were in the preseason Ryan Tannehill, it seems he's going to wait for a situation where he can step in and play. and that happens, when a guy tears up a knee, or a Joe Flacco situation of last year, where he
Correct.
can go and play for a substantial part of the season. So, but you lose Tua, and that offense and everything that he brought to it, that was detailed for what he does, and now you don't have a guy back there whose skill set. Look, the skill set ain't going to be the same, but there's not enough overlapping skills to run the same offense, I don't think.
No, and let's also understand that Tua's probably two big strengths are the quick release and the accuracy. And he developed the timing with his receivers through rep after rep after rep after rep that neither Skylar Thompson nor Mike White got. So they're starting, while they're familiar with the offense, they don't have that kind of timing down with the receivers. And that makes a difference.
And now you lose the left tackle, which it sounds like he's going to be lost for a period of time. The way Mike did, when he says it wasn't season ending, it wasn't catastrophic, that makes you think he's okay. He's going to be gone for a while. And again, all the pressure points of this team building were hit last night in a awful way for the Dolphins. Quarterback, left tackle, the third receiver. It was Buffalo couldn't have had a better or easier night. And if you're the Dolphins, you spent the offseason thinking, how do we beat Buffalo? They're the team we got to get over. And you didn't come close in the even before you lost your quarterback.
No, because this whole season was about, can this team take the next step, which includes beating the playoff caliber opponents and winning in December. And this was the first test, and that's an F and an F minus if that's possible for the Dolphins.
They got to go and to Seattle and the next few games and right the ship. Last night was a full rudder left, trying to miss the iceberg, and we don't know how much water they're taking on until the next few games, and we'll see what happens, because that's the type of game, we've seen it here, that can sink seasons and eras, and that's why it was a very defining. It meant more than the game. Now we'll see how. We heard of this is a tougher team. This is a team with great leaders. All this stuff. Well, we're going to see where they are in the next couple of weeks.
No, without question. And for those, as we wrap this up, if you've been watching the whole show and you're upset that this has been so negative, Devon Achane looked great. We're looking for positives. Devon Achane looked great. Beyond that, Jason Sanders made his one field goal attempt. There's just not a whole lot. This was like, wow. About as you painted every possible scenario before that game. And by the way, this is the part where you and I do our mea culpas. We both picked the Dolphins to win the game.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming.
I didn't see this coming at all. I clearly we understood that they could lose, but to get like so badly outplayed and in the night be a complete disaster on every level, even beyond the Tua injury, it's just, to me that was just, whoa, not bad. And again, they have like quote unquote mini bye now to try to right the ship and then head on to see what they can do against the Seattle Seahawks. So on that very chipper note, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Hope you liked the conversation, even if you didn't like necessarily the tone, because again, we could tell you everything is going to be great and all that, but we're here as journalists to tell you how it is, not how we want it to be. Right?
Yeah, for me, I love to cover excellence. Whatever team I'm covering, but we haven't seen enough excellence.
No, and certainly didn't see any excellence last night. So anyway, on that note, thank you very much, Dave Hyde. Catch his work at sunsentinel.com, columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. You see the Twitter handle or X handle. If you're listening on an audio podcast, it's at Dave Hyde Sports. You can find my work on Miami Dolphins on SI. Please like, subscribe, share. and we will catch you all later. Thanks for watching.